Welcome to Chris Parkin Shooting Sports. I like to give my videos a bit of variety. I like to, review a lot of different rifles. And you know me, I like to talk about stuff because I think it helps explain what I do, why I do it, and it maybe helps explain to you things that you'll learn, and you won't just take away the review of one rifle being the absolute end of the business on that rifle alone. It helps you sort of pick up some of the details that I look at in a rifle and allows you to sort of pick up any rifle yourself and compare and contrast those details. So it's about, maybe learning a little bit, and learning is not a dirty word. So let's start this rifle today. This is a Howa Superlite, and this rifle kind of stimulates me to talk about a lot of sometimes things that might be considered a bit critical, but I want to be very objective about it. Anyway, let's start out. I'm just going to move this out of the way. This rifle comes with a nice travel case. Excellent. I'll just pop that out of the way. Right, critical thing to say about this rifle, first of all. It's called the Superlite. It's available in 243, 65 Creedmoor, 7mm8, 308. And as well as Superlite, which is a nice word, very compact word to, tell everything about a rifle. But actually, the critical thing to remember is not only is it super light, it is super compact. And the one big benefit I will say about this rifle, before I consider any of its sort of more technical attributes, is that this rifle is absolutely ideal for smaller shooters, because a lot of rifles are built to sort of a general ergonomic specification, probably 5th to 95th percentile, something like that, and they just don't suit a lot of people, ladies, junior shooters, things like that. They just haven't got the build for it, they haven't got the size for it. Now I'm 5'11", which is probably about average size for a guy, probably average sort of arms, average sort of fingers, all those kind of things. I'm very probably kind of very Mr. Average. I tend to prefer European rifles for the sort of length of pull and things you get on them there. You're starting about 14 and a quarter inches. And the first thing we'll look at on this rifle is the weight, because it is very light. Overall weight is 2,177 grams, which is 4 pounds 13 ounces, and that's minus the scope, bipod, everything like that. The other critical thing to remember is that this is a 16 and a quarter inch barrel. So it's 16 quarters, 16 and a half, can't quite remember, but you get the idea. It is screw cut, threaded for a moderator, and I've got an RCC moderator on here which Highland Outdoors supplied me, along with the GPO scope, the tier 1 rings, and the things to go on the Picatinny rail. So the rifle was straight out the box ready to shoot, and you can see that is a very small, short, compact, and hence very lightweight rifle. Overall length 900mm, which is only 35 and a quarter inches. So it is super compact and easy handling, and I think that's the most critical thing to remember about this rifle, because if you think you're some 6'2" guy and you want a super lightweight mountain rifle, you will swamp this thing. I'm 5'11", I kind of swamp it already. So just bear that in mind and look at the objective facts about it, because length of pull is only 338mm, which is 13 and a quarter inches. So it is quite compact and short to you. Now this is sort of cross between a mini action and a standard small action from Howa. So it's ideal. It's a 16mm bolt diameter, 100mm bolt stroke, and you've got a 50mm bolt handle, 18mm bolt knob on it. So it suits the kind of proportions of the rifle. Now some people might say, oh wow, you've got really high scope rings on there. And yes, to be fair, you might say those scope rings are a little bit high, but you do have to remember that you physically need space for your hand to actually wrap that bolt knob and operate the bolt. It's a 2-lug bolt, it's 90-degree lift, so you do actually have to proportion it correctly for that. So although this is only, I think, a 44mm front end on the scope, it's not really saving anything from having a 50, so you might as well have the low light performance of a 50, because if you're restricted to dropping your tube not really any lower than that, and your eyepiece not really lower than that, well, you might as well fill this space here with a bit more light entry capability. Rifle's got a Picatinny rail on it that makes scope mounting super simple, super easy. I'm a huge fan of that. Trigger pull is 2-stage. This is Howa's hacked trigger. It is adjustable. It's quite crisp, quite nice to shoot, no problems with that at all. And it's also got a 3-position safety catch, so you've got forward for fire, middle has got bolt operational safe, and rear locks the bolt. So it's pretty ideal, to be fair. Gives you nice capability with the rifle. The bolt release is on the left side here, so I'll just pop that out and show you the bolt. Fairly conventional 2-lug bolt. It's got an M16 extractor, plunger ejector on it, locks into the receiver itself. It's a steel receiver, the barrel's threaded into the receiver. Howa's are fairly popular action if you want to have a rifle rebarreled. You can see the gas escape ports and everything on that. Fairly conventional bolt, really nice to use. It does advertise toolless firing pin disassembly, which is very nice and possible, but how many people are ever going to use that? Because I think there's a lot of people who have a lot of problems with rifles before they're ever going to get anywhere near dismantling bolts for maintenance. And to be fair, it's not something you really need to do every day, but it is advertised, so Howa clearly think it's an important thing to promote. Now, the barrel is obviously very short. Now, it shoots pretty well. It'll probably shoot about MOA. These were shot at 100 metres, so about 9% further than 100 yards, which most of you are accustomed to. But the critical thing to remember is I tested 3 different types of ammunition through it. I've got a 120 grain match bullet. This is a 6.5 Creedmoor, by the way. 125 grain all copper hunting bullet, and 143 grain conventional lead core copper jacket hunting bullet. Now, the big thing to remember with barrel length is it gives you masses of, great handling capability, but there is physically less space to burn the powder in it and generate velocity. So it's not a criticism of short barrels, it's just a factor you have to consider. Now, these 3 types of ammunition, I happened to shoot this rifle yesterday alongside a 24-inch barrel Creedmoor. It's nothing's better, nothing's worse. I'm just saying it's a comparison. So you've got nearly 8 inches difference in barrel length there. Now, most factory ammunition comes with information on it to say the approximate velocity, and sometimes it can be, some manufacturers are a little bit excessive, but the test barrel is usually 24 inches long and it will generate a velocity from a 24-inch barrel. And to be fair, I do find the Hornady 8 ammunition values pretty confident, pretty honest on most occasions. Now, I shot all 3 types of this ammunition and on targets next to each other. So that was yesterday with another rifle, that was yesterday with this rifle. And the thing to remember is that I also chronographed the 3 same types of ammunition. And on average, you were losing about 300 feet per second between a 24-inch barrel and a 16.25-inch barrel. So it's something to figure in. It was still making over 1,700 foot-pounds, which is important to UK shooters. And of course, the 6.5 Creedmoor is certainly going to benefit a little bit more from its bullet weight. If you went for the 243 in the super short barrel, do be aware if you want to maintain legal muzzle energy that you will possibly, well, I wouldn't say you struggle, but you need to consider what the legal muzzle energy you require is and whether you are generating it or not, even though it's a 6mm bullet. Just a factor to think about. But in a 308, you're not going to have an issue. 7mm, you're not going to have an issue really at all. And the Creedmoor clearly generates over 1,700 foot-pounds itself anyway, because the heavier bullet from the other cartridges, and the 308, I actually found this rifle surprisingly comfortable to shoot. It had a sound moderator on it, which dampens a bit of the recoil, dampens a bit of the muzzle lift. And in fairness, I found it more the fact I was physically kind of overwhelming it size-wise, than it was too jumpy or too skittish to shoot. I did find the short length of pull more difficult because I was kind of really having to reach forward into the rifle with my shoulder while I kept my head craned back to maintain eye relief. And of course there's pretty much a limit to how far you can get your scope forward and things like that, and well supported. But again, that comes back to, it's a rifle suitable for smaller shooters. This is a stocky stock, it's carbon fibre, it's got a limb saver recoil pad on the back, so it's very well dampened, there's no real resonance through the rifle, and the recoil is well controlled and linear, so I've certainly no complaints about it at all. And the 6.5 Creedmoor is, it gets all sorts of criticism here, there and everywhere, but it is a fundamentally extremely good cartridge for the UK usage, for everything from foxes to deer. So, don't dismiss it on sort of egotistical grounds. But I would say in a 308, I suspect this rifle will become a little bit of a handful And ironically, that's exactly what it's not. It's not a handful, because of course the compact dimensions on the stock mean that your hand is kind of, you know, look at my hand on there. I'm just swamping that, and the trigger is you know, well, you're just right within my grasp there. It's very short. I sort of need my finger to be more like here, and my hand was kind of back here down the stock to get acceptable trigger reach on it. So again, smaller shooters, smaller stature, smaller height, smaller hands, shorter fingers. So in that respect, it is very, very well proportioned. One thing I would say though is that smaller shooters will often have smaller head, smaller cheekbone. So you might want to think about adding a little bit of cheek piece height on here to get you better scope alignment. And again, we've discussed the actual height the scope physically is going to be before. That bolt is sort of clearing the stock there, it's fine. But you know, there's nothing to stop you putting a little bit of a cheek piece on here to give you a better position. And bolt travel is only 100mm, so you've not got an issue of the bolt coming way back and hitting you in the face or anything like that. So in that respect, those are some really good differences and benefits of this rifle. Now, if you are a taller shooter and you want a super small, super compact, super carry rifle that's great for use from the vehicle or from high seats, things this, that and the other, yeah, it's going to be fine, because you're not going to be shooting it that much. It's going to be a hunting rifle. It's not a target rifle, it's not a range rifle, it's not something a taller shooter is going to want to shoot all day long on the range, because it is physically very small and light. But if you are a shooter in that size threshold, it's going to be a great rifle for you. So just bear these things in mind. It's not suitable for me, but it may well be suitable for you. And that is a key thing to accept from this rifle review. Let's look at some of the other things about it now. Right, it's a flush fit magazine, takes 3 rounds. Now this is one of the things I would be a little bit critical of, because the magazine kind of, you know, it clips in easily enough, loads easily enough, it cycles easily enough, you can see it on camera, but when you pull the button back there, it kind of, you know, it doesn't really easily drop out, and you do kind of need to get your fingertips on it to draw it out. It's fine when you're shooting in the summer and you've got bare hands, but if you've got gloves on, that's obviously going to be a little bit of a fiddle to get out of there. So just bear that one in mind. Of course, you could put your finger through the top here and push it out from above, which makes it maybe a little bit easier. But it's a very small, very compact, very lightweight magazine. And that's of course the same magazine if it's 243, 65 Creedmoor, 7mm8 or 308. It's going to be the same thing. It's totally polymer. It's got nice curved Phillips there, so you know it clips in. No issues with that, and because it isn't going to drop out too easily either. Conversely to the fact it's a little bit tricky to get out when you need it out, and of course you might say, well, with ammunition in it will drop out easily, but then because technically generally you're removing a magazine when it's empty, not when it's full. But anyway, right, those are great factors, great features, great descriptive details. Let's talk about some of the negatives now. Now it's a super lightweight rifle. I'm going to take the bolt out for doing this just because it's going to look a little bit easier, and I'm also going to take the scope off as well. Now, I love Picatinny rails, it makes it easy to take scopes on and off, and of course with the Picatinny rail you have no problem adding night vision, things like that. But I'm just going to pop this off because I want to show you something that I was taught a long time ago by someone who built my first custom rifle, and he told me all about stock bedding, inletting and action stress. And he said the easiest way to tell if an action is stressed within the fit on the stock is to undo the front action screw and see if the barrel rises up. So if I put that there, and I've done this actually before off camera and taken some photos of it, that barrel sort of looks like it might free float, but it doesn't free float. So you do need to be a little bit aware that if you are a bit mechanically aggressive with the rifle, the stock will bend. It's not super rigid, so you need to be aware that you're not touching the barrel with it. Now, in this condition, absolutely set up under its own weight, no issues, no one, you know, kind of mauling all over it trying to shoot. You're not putting any pressure on the stock, and it does free float. But if you start, you know, having to kind of grip and grimace to hold the gun into you because it is quite small, you're going to put more physical force on the stock, the weight of your hands, things like that. Now, again, smaller shooters, it's more in scale. Bigger shooters, not so much so. There's plenty of space on the stock. It's got a soft touch finish to it, so it is actually quite grippy, and it's not sort of sticky soft touch, it's just ever so slightly tactile. And you do get a tactile finish from the black, grey, tan, sort of brown finish colours on here, which I think actually looks really nice, to be honest. It looks, you know, it fits in with nature, it doesn't look overly aggressive. I think it's a really nice looking rifle. But anyway, here's the thing about the stock. If you slacken off this front action screw here, and I need to try and do this maybe so the ceiling camera can see this. So if I slacken off this front action screw, can you see how that barrel is now lifting way out of the stock? And that's the thing, that effectively when you tighten these action screws down, you are kind of bending the stock and the barrel together to fit each other perfectly. And yes, although you're getting a great solid mechanical fit, you are applying stress between the two components. So now with those action screws fully tight, that barrel doesn't free float. And if I back this front action screw off, we may well see that barrel rise out of the stock. You can see that coming out of the stock on camera, can't you? And that is implying that when you tighten the stock against the barreled action, it moves. And I hope you can see that moving on camera there. I'm trying to hold it as still as possible whilst undoing and redoing this front action screw. Can you see that? And I'll put a picture on screen that shows it in a little bit more clear detail. And that applies to any rifle. It's just a little bit more visible on this one because it's a very light stock. It's a very, you know, the stock has got a certain amount of flexibility in it. But while we're doing this, let's just pop it out and show you what is inside the stock. So just undo the rear action screw as well. These are Torx action screws, which is a nice fitting because you get a great ability to lock into them. Just do those. And out we come. So the bottom metal on this rifle is actually a polymer unit. Well, I don't think that's a huge discrepancy in terms of the way it works. Everything sort of fits together very neatly, and there's a nice neat inlet in the stock here for that to fit into. So that just clicks back down into here, and there's a neat fit in there. You can see where it's machined out here to fit the action, but of course there's not a lot of meat, there's not a lot of strength in the stock itself around the action. It's a flat bottom action, the recoil lug goes in there. And looking at this Howa action, wow, that feels so light when it's out of the rifle. That is the Howa mini action, the hatch trigger on here. You've got a big recoil lug there which makes sure you're transferring all the forces through the stock exactly as you want it. And you know, that is just insanely light because it's a light, short barrel. So let's pop this back together now. So in terms of all that factor about bedding stress and things, this, that and the other, you just need to bear these things in mind when you're buying and shooting a rifle, that although it's not an optimum thing for a target rifle, on a hunting rifle, does it matter that much? Well, I think no. In this rifle, the rifle shot acceptably well. There's a slight point of impact shift on the target. That's just purely because I was shooting 3 completely different types of ammunition. But do bear these factors in mind, and you've maybe learned a little bit about it so that when you're choosing a rifle, you see that bolt there, if I've tightened the front one down first, that rear bolt will hardly reach its fitting. So I'll just tighten that back in now. And there we go, we're all back together. So, what can I tell you about the gun? Well, I've told you a lot about this gun. I've used it as an example for a lot of things, a lot of rifles. That Picatinny rail on top is bolted on in 4 places, by the way, so that's going to be fine. I would say this rifle is almost unique in my experience. I'm not saying it's unique in the market, I'm just saying in my experience, because it is a truly, genuinely 100% scaled rifle for the smaller shooter. Everything about it is in proportion. It still shoots well, it still shoots accurately, it still shoots consistently, and the precision is there. It'll do sub MOA. The barrel was fairly thermally stable as well, actually. I certainly didn't have any problems with it. I just had to make sure I was quite delicate in my hold and usage of it, just because that stock's a little bit more flexible. But essentially, this is a rifle I think will appeal to a lot of shooters. And I know a friend of mine has got his eyes on this because his son wants this rifle instantly, because it's perfect for what he needs. He hasn't seen it yet, and probably if he does see it, he's going to go, "Dad, I want that now," but that's a question for a slightly different day for him. Again, lady shooters, shorter shooters, it's certainly one to look at. Just bear in mind you might want a little bit of a cheek piece height raise on there, because it's not adjustable stock, because it's a hunting rifle. It's lightweight because it's a hunting rifle. It's not the perfect accurate shooter because it's a hunting rifle. And please, when you watch reviews, think about whether something is designed for the hunting or for shooting long range or targets or this, that and the other, because it's key. And so much marketing totally dispels this very simple word between hunting rifle and target rifle. And I think this is a hunting rifle that's got excellent use for many shooters. Right, I hope you've enjoyed that fairly comprehensive detailed review. Thank you for watching. Please like, subscribe, don't forget to comment, tell me your opinions, and click that notification bell to make sure you keep track of my regular uploads. Thank you to Highland Outdoors for sending this rifle to me, and also thank you to my channel sponsors, Hornady, the British Shooting Show and WMS Firearms Training, for use of their facilities, their ammunition, and also the excellent show we get to see every year at the start of the year in February. Right, thank you for watching, bye for now.